it's always a pleasure to have joining us every so often. And it looks like we're going to be chatting with him with a great deal of regularity. The Superintendent of Public Instruction, North Carolina Superintendent of Public Public Instruction. Oh, yeah, and maybe construction in light of the recent bond referenda that are being proposed for construction of schools. We have joining us this afternoon Superintendent Mark Johnson. And with that, Mark, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Hey, always a pleasure. And yes, we are going to be one way or the other, whatever plan we choose, we're going to be swinging some hammers. And we already are. I'm very proud of the work we've done to get more lottery money to school construction. We started that 2 years ago, and we are actually going to be opening up a brand new 21st century state-of-the-art school building for Jones County this school year because more lottery money is getting to schools where it belongs.
You know, that's unfortunate, and I'm trying to remain neutral. I'm one of the individuals who was adamantly opposed to the lottery for two reasons. First, I felt that really government shouldn't be in the gambling business if they want to have gambling, and this more than you wanted to know, so we shouldn't have tapped that vein. But be that as it is, my attitude was let private enterprise do it and let government tax private enterprise, which is fine. But the other criticism, which proved I was proved correct within 2 years, was that this money would be in some fashion used to supplant financing schools and the school budget, and or being siphoned off, which for a period of time it was, but now is being redirected back to where it was originally planned, to actual schools and education and school buildings. So, yeah, I think this is a great opportunity, and of course, couldn't come at a better time with many of these communities recovering from Hurricanes Florence and Matthew, and of course, Michael. This past year as well. So
no, you're right. I won't go out there and say I'm a huge fan of the lottery. Obviously, we've had it now for over 10 years, so we've got it. But you're also right. It did not take long for people in Raleigh to start putting their hands in that pot, and you start looking around saying, "Where's this money going?" So I am happy that we've been able to redirect focus on getting that money, not just spreading it thinly across certain areas, but really directing it to where it's needed most. And one of those is going to be right there in Jones County. Really excited about that.
And, of course, Jones and Oslo counties, of course, was seriously damaged by Hurricane Florence and a little bit by, I would say, Michael as well. Speaking of that, let's talk about this for a moment in relationship to the upcoming I'm trying not to use the word strike. So strike that from my conversation. The May 1 rally in Raleigh. Now, I did not introduce that into the conversation now, Mark, please.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm innocent. So, striking that word from my conversation. The May 1 rally in Raleigh, day of action. And I talked with Mark Jewell, president of the North Carolina Association of Educators, and he was saying that this is oriented towards mobilizing teachers to get the legislature to move on several plans. And you have requested, you're not opposed to the teachers lobbying for their cause, but you're not happy about the May 1 date. How come?
Multiple reasons. First off, you're exactly right. We live in the United States. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, and they're entitled to the freedom to espout their opinion, right? Everyone is entitled to peacefully assemble and protest. But what I was concerned about is the organizers, and you mentioned Mark Jewell, the organizers of this protest, not all the teachers across the state, but specifically, let's talk about the organizers. They picked May 1st. They picked May 1st this year.
Right.
Last year, they picked May 16th. And what your listeners need to know is May 16th was picked a long time in advance because that was the first day that the lawmakers went back to Raleigh for what they call the short session. That's just May, June, July. Just the short session just to get work done in that summer. This year, we have the long session. Session started all the way back in January, and these organizers specifically picked May 1st. They could have just as easily picked a day over spring break. Not all the spring breaks line up, but there are many, many spring breaks that line up. where we would have many, many less schools closed for instruction as a result of this protest. Also, they could just have easily picked a day in June after the end of the school year when the General Assembly will be in Raleigh. They will be talking about the budget. They will be working. They could have picked a day in June where they could have made just as much as an impact, gotten just as many teachers to show up, but they would not have caused schools to close. And that is my main concern here. We lose out on instructional time, which I know, the communities in eastern North Carolina cannot afford to lose more instructional time this school year. We've already lost too much with the storms. But we also have students who miss out on nutrition. I do not like that it is the reality today that there are some students who don't get the proper nutrition at home, but that is the reality we deal with, and we should acknowledge that if schools are closed, there are going to be students who don't get the proper nutrition that day. They won't get breakfast. They won't get lunch. That's a concern. And then also there's the concern for other school employees like bus drivers, cafeteria workers. If schools are closed and they don't work, they don't get paid. They get paid by the amount they work. And finally, of course, we can't forget about parents who might not be able to find alternatives for that day. I talked to someone here in Raleigh about the last teacher protest last year. She owns a small housekeeping business. Her and her employees were not able to find child care for the last teacher protest, and they missed out on an income for that day. So it is just multiple effects that occur when we close schools. And I came out and said, look, I support teachers. We are working hard for teachers. We are now second in the South for teacher pay. We have been increasing teacher pay year after year. We're second in the South. We're sending out more money for school construction. We're sending out more money for classroom supplies. We're sending out more money for professional development. All things that are important, but we're also doing it efficiently, so we're not just doing more money for more of the same. That is important to recognize, but it's also important to recognize that, yes, teachers can have the right to protest. I just wish that it wouldn't have happened on a day, specifically May 1st, to cancel school.
Again, our guest this afternoon, Superintendent of Public Instruction, Mark Johnson. Mark, the other aspect of this, and there are other reasons apparently that they're protesting, and of course, the situation associated with schools like in Onslow County I think they lost approximately 8 weeks of educational time, and other counties throughout the southeastern region of the state as a result of hurricane damage. And you've got also lost school time in western North Carolina because of weather challenges there. The thing that surprised me is that the fact that so many of these teachers now are looking, part of the program is Medicaid. They want to increase Medicaid coverage in North Carolina. They want $15 an hour for employees for employees in North Carolina, particularly for school employees. And yet, to your point a moment ago, you've got schools that the school boards are closing so as to save the school system, the school board of that county, that school district money, because they don't have to pay the teachers. The teachers don't lose money. Well, I'm sorry, they don't lose money, but they also don't have to pay the staff at the schools. It seems to me it's almost counterproductive. Before we go to the caller standing by, what's your thought on that? I just was surprised at the $15 an hour and the Medicaid component.
And
of it.
I was also taken aback by the Medicaid expansion, because that shows that this is growing more than just an education rally, education protest. This is growing into something else.
Politics.
And it's growing into more and more political. Let me also say, I'll make the connection, because other people have made it, and I have not been putting this out there to teachers. I have not been putting this out there to parents, but plenty of other people are pointing out that, again, these organizers specifically picked May 1st. May 1st is May Day. May Day is a historical celebration day for communism and socialism.
Yeah. Right.
So May Day, and you've seen the pictures of the red clenched fist. That is their symbol. Last year it was a heart. So a lot going on here.
All right, we've got some callers standing by. I know I've got to go to a break, but I'm going to start with Dennis in Jacksonville. Mark in Morehead City, stand by. But first, let's go to Dennis. Dennis, good afternoon to you. Yes, sir.
Hey, gentlemen, good afternoon. I'll just let you know I dug into this really, really deep last year, and the first thing I'll tell you is you were right on that this has a socialist agenda behind it. Last year at the NCAA, you could go to links on their website. One of those links was saying, hey, if you have any out-of-pocket expenses, you can apply to this organization, and they will reimburse you. And they were a flat-out, straight-out communist organization, no bones about it. That's who they said they were. So this is not some made-up conspiracy theory issue. It is an actual fact. It was done last year.
Dennis,
second,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I'm going to let you finish up.
Second, there's no reason any school should close, period. When it comes down to it, there are rules about taking days off, and those rules are real simple. You can ask for and you can get that day off if there is a substitute available, period. If you choose to take that day off when there is none, you have to show up with a doctor's note that's going to show why you weren't there to begin with. And if that is produced, one of two things has happened. Either a doctor has lied or a teacher has lied. There is zero reason our schools should ever close. Those laws are put in place for a reason. Those rules are put in place for a real reason. Right. So they have every right to ask for the day off. They do not have every right to take the day off.
All right, Dennis, thanks very much for the call. As I wrap it up with you, I'm going to go to a break, but I've got a real quick question as we go to the break here. What about, have you talked to anybody? Have they expressed any frustration over this planned May 1 rally? I won't use the word strike. Have you talked to anybody about it?
Who are you asking?
You, Dennis, you. I'm wondering, have you spoken to any?
Well, let me put it this way. Last year I got in front of our school board and I admonished every single person in that room that this had better not happen again.
And
that if it did, that I would be there challenging this at the state level, and that I would expect that people would be taken to task for breaking the law if they did so. So in Onslow County, our schools absolutely will not be closing.
Outstanding.
Our superintendent, everybody here has said that it is not going to happen.
Thanks very much, Dennis. Appreciate the call on that one. All right, we're going to continue our conversation with Mark Johnson. We have Mark in Morehead City, Lynn in Washington. Stand by. Viewpoints on the Talk Station, FM 107 AM 1240. We've just got a few minutes left in the program. We have with us this afternoon Superintendent of Public Instruction, Department of Public Instruction, Mark Johnson. Let me just make a real quick comment about this. I reached out to his office one time to ask if he would join us. He has been very faithful, very regular in talking to us. And by the way, it's not the only radio station, but the point of the matter is we have a superintendent who is actually trying to talk to, I shouldn't say trying, he is talking to the community. Let's start with Mark.
Let me just say, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I do put the emphasis on trying because you at least are an outlet that'll let me do it. The Raleigh news media ain't exactly letting us connect with the people, that's for sure.
I'm sorry. Was there a statement there? We know it is. Mark, we've got Mark in Morehead City standing by. Mark, welcome to the program. Mark Johnson, our guest. Yes, sir.
Yes, Lockwood and Mr. Johnson. I don't know if you've covered this previously, but I understand that there are a considerable number of schools that have vacant space in them, but we seem to be on a school building binge. And the thing that gets me is like this happened in Knightdale.
Okay.
They build a school, some architectural monument, and then as soon as they get it done, or even before they get it done, they start pulling trailers in. And I'm thinking, well, what's the point? If people are going to be so mobile and we got to pull trailers in, why not just build the schools with a base of trailers and containers and stuff like that? And containers can be locked down, stories high.
All right, Mark.
And why not do something like that?
Hold on,
and then
Mark,
stop putting all this money in the expensive schools.
Let me interrupt you on that one, Mark. Very good question. I know what you're asking. Why don't we also standardize the construction of our schools? Mark, I've got to go to another caller, but let me give our guest, Mark Johnson, opportunity to respond to that. Thanks for your call, by the way. Mark, I have two items. Number one, the inability ability to adequately, address the issue of construction and, of course, the trailers issue, but also standardization of buildings for schools. Is there an effort on the part of the department to sort of guide school boards on this? What's your response to that?
Yeah, very, very good point. There is, especially now more so than before the storm, because we learned during Hurricane Florence, just like we did with Hurricane Floyd a decade ago, well over a decade ago, we learned some things that happened to the new school designs during the storms. Big problem we had with some of the designs at schools during Hurricane Florence was roofs being peeled back. So we're going to be looking at, are there better roof designs? So yes, more and more standardization, more and more cost-effective as well, to the point of some schools having extra space. You are seeing more of that in eastern North Carolina now as some counties lose population, but these schools that are old, instead of renovating those schools because they do have the extra space, were actually another controversial topic. There are actually efforts to consolidate schools so that you have one much nicer facility that can serve more students in that one facility.
And I can appreciate the controversy associated with that, but we'll not deal with that today. Let's go to our other caller. And by the way, our guest this afternoon, Mark Johnson, Superintendent of Public Instruction in North Carolina. Lynn in Washington joining us. Lynn, thanks for your time.
Hey, I don't understand why they cannot pick days in the summer to take off of school for these rallies. And also, they are becoming very political to expand Medicaid and minimum wage. That is not their place. And number three, expanding Medicaid, I want to know when the topic's going to come up that we, the taxpayers, have to keep paying for people who have children that they cannot afford. When are we going to have that conversation?
I'm going to leave that last one alone for the moment, but I'm going to let the superintendent respond to the other two items, which he did talk about a few moments ago. Lynn, by the way, as I wrap it up with you, in your conversation, what are you hearing among people that you're talking to about the May 1? I don't want to use the word strike again. The May 1 protest.
Well, parents are having to take off of work and they're having to use their vacation days to be off of work if they have vacation days.
That's a good
point. And
point.
that takes up a day that they don't have if their child gets sick or something like that where they have to be home with them.
Good point. Thanks very much, Lynn. Appreciate your call on that one. We're going to wrap it up with Superintendent of Public Instruction, Mark Johnson. Mark, I'm hearing frustrations from the parents. Have you, and with about 30 seconds to go, are you hearing similar experiences across the state?
Yes, and I got to tell you, I don't even need to respond to Lynn's questions because you could just hear the passion in her voice about this. Yes, we support protesters having the right to be peaceful assemblies and protests, but it could have been done on a day that did not interrupt school. Those organizers went out, they picked the list of things they wanted to protest for, like Medicaid. They picked the date, May 1st. It could have been other topics. It could have been another day. Yes, I feel a lot of this frustration out there in the state, and we are going to see how it turns out for this one particular protest.
I'm sorry we didn't have time to talk about the potential of cursive writing. I'm going to talk to you off air about that. That's a subject we've got to talk about at some point. You're listening to Viewpoints on the Talk Station. Special thanks to our guest this afternoon, Superintendent of Public Instruction, Mark Johnson. Stay with us. Mark, stay with me as well. I want to chat with you briefly off air.